Most people think a heart attack announces itself. Crushing chest pain, the left arm going numb, a dramatic collapse in front of someone who can call for help. That's what the movies show. That's what most people expect. But if you're over 60, your heart doesn't always warn you like that. Sometimes it warns you in the middle of the night, quietly, in ways that are easy to explain away. A strange gasp for air, a trip to the bathroom you didn't expect to make, ankles that feel a little tighter than usual when you wake up. Easy to dismiss, easy to blame on getting older, and that's exactly the problem. Tonight, we're going to walk through 5 things your body may already be doing while you sleep. Signals that, on their own, seem too small to matter, but together can paint a picture your heart has been trying to show you for months. Stay with me through all 5, because it's the pattern across them, not any single one, that actually matters most. And I'll show you exactly what to do with that information before this video ends. Let's start with something almost no appointment has time to properly explain. What your cardiovascular system is actually supposed to do overnight. In a healthy body, sleep isn't a pause button for your heart. It's a shift change. Your blood pressure is supposed to drop, usually 10 to 20% lower than your daytime average. Your heart rate slows. Your arteries relax. Think of it like a factory switching from a full day crew to a smaller night crew that spends the quiet hours doing maintenance the day shift never has time for. After 60, that system becomes less reliable. Blood vessels stiffen with age. The hormonal signals that once protected your heart overnight begin to weaken. And the honest truth is, the hours between midnight and 6 in the morning carry the highest risk of heart attack and stroke for older adults. Not the afternoon, not the stressful morning rush, but the quiet hours when almost nobody's paying attention. So let's pay attention. Here's warning sign number 1, and it's the one people are most likely to talk themselves out of. You wake up with tightness, pressure, or an ache across your chest, and by the time you're fully awake, it's already fading. Doctors call this nocturnal angina, and unlike the chest pain that shows up when you're climbing stairs or shoveling snow, this version happens while you're doing absolutely nothing. Lying still, sound asleep. That's actually part of what makes it more concerning, not less. Chest pain that appears completely at rest with no exertion to explain it behaves differently than chest pain tied to activity, and doctors take it more seriously for exactly that reason. Picture it like a kink in a garden hose that only happens when the hose is coiled a certain way overnight. The water, or in this case the blood supply to part of your heart muscle, gets briefly restricted, then flows again once things shift. Some people feel that as a wave of pressure. Others feel it as a dull ache that spreads toward the jaw or the left arm before fading. It can last anywhere from a few minutes to nearly half an hour. Here's the line I want you to remember. If that pressure is severe, if it doesn't ease up within a few minutes, or if it comes with shortness of breath, sweating, or nausea, that is not a wait until morning symptom. That's a call 911 symptom. Even if it fades before the ambulance arrives, even if you feel silly for calling, nighttime chest pain that wakes you from sleep gets evaluated, not explained away. Warning sign number 2 is quieter and in some ways sneakier because it doesn't feel like a heart symptom at all. It feels like a breathing problem. You wake up suddenly gasping for air, feeling like you can't get a full breath, and you find yourself needing to sit up or prop yourself higher on pillows before the feeling eases. Some people describe it as a choking sensation. Others just remember bolting upright in a mild panic, unsure what happened. When your heart isn't pumping as efficiently as it should, Fluid can back up into the lungs, especially once you lie flat and gravity stops helping to keep it out of your chest. Doctors have a specific name for this, paroxysmal nocturnal dyspnea, but you don't need the Latin. You just need to notice the pattern. If you're increasingly needing extra pillows to breathe comfortably or waking up gasping more than once, that's your heart telling you it's struggling to keep up with a workload it used to handle without a second thought. This is different from the ordinary breathlessness you might feel after a bad dream or a warm bedroom. It comes on suddenly, it's tied to lying flat, and propping yourself up actually helps. If that sounds familiar, it belongs at the list of things to mention at your very next appointment. Not something to quietly work around by buying a wedge pillow and never asking why you need one. Now here's warning sign number 3, and this is the one most people have heard of, but almost nobody connects to their heart specifically. Snoring loudly enough and pausing your breathing often enough that it qualifies as sleep apnea. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's the person lying next to you who's mentioned it more than once. Usually half joking, usually not entirely joking. Here's why I want you to take it seriously. Data from the NHLBI funded sleep heart health study found that sleep apnea is associated with a 140% increase in the risk of heart failure, a 60% increase in stroke risk, and a 30% increase in coronary heart disease risk. Those aren't small numbers, and they aren't fringe research. That's one of the largest sleep and heart studies ever conducted in the United States. Here's the mechanism, and it's worth understanding because it explains why this matters so much, specifically at night. Every time your airway partially collapses and your breathing pauses, your oxygen level drops. Your brain senses that as a crisis and floods your body with stress hormones to force you awake enough to breathe again. Your heart rate spikes, your blood pressure surges. Then you drift back to sleep and it happens again. Sometimes dozens of times in a single hour, for years, without you remembering a single one of those awakenings the next morning. If you snore heavily, if you or someone in your household has noticed pauses in your breathing, or if you wake up with headaches and exhaustion despite what felt like a full night's sleep, a sleep study is worth asking about. It's not glamorous, it's not exciting, but it's one of the most well-documented modifiable risk factors for heart disease that most people over 60 have simply never been screened for. We're at 3 of 5. Before we get into the last 2, if breakdowns like this, the kind that actually explain the why, not just hand you a list, are useful to you, this is a good moment to hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if any of these 3 so far sound familiar, drop which one in the comments. I read them, and honestly, they tell me a lot about what to cover next. Warning sign number 4 is when almost nobody thinks to mention to their cardiologist because they mention it to their urologist instead, if they mention it to anyone at all. Waking up more than once or twice a night consistently to use the bathroom. It's easy to blame this on getting older, on drinking water too late, on a prostate issue, on nothing in particular, and sometimes that's exactly what it is. But there's a real, well-documented connection between frequent nighttime urination and heart function that deserves more attention than it usually gets. During the day, fluid tends to pool in your legs and ankles. When you lie down at night, that fluid redistributes, gets reabsorbed into your bloodstream, and your kidneys, sensing the extra volume, respond by producing more urine. In a healthy heart, this is a fairly minor overnight adjustment. In a heart that's starting to struggle, it becomes a much bigger nightly event. The numbers here are worth sitting with for a second. Research has found that nearly 80% of people living with heart failure experience this kind of frequent nighttime urination, And in a study out of Ghent University Hospital that followed patients who went on to develop coronary heart disease, the majority of them had this exact symptom show up months before any chest pain or shortness of breath ever did. In other words, for a lot of people, this isn't a late stage sign. It's often one of the earliest ones, which is exactly why it's worth mentioning at your next appointment instead of just keeping a glass of water further from the bed. And finally, warning sign number 5, the one you'll actually see with your own eyes before you even get out of bed: swelling in your ankles, feet, or lower legs that's noticeably worse in the morning than you remember it being the night before, or socks that leave a deep indentation in your skin that takes longer than usual to fade. When your heart isn't pumping with its full former strength, blood can back up in the veins of your legs, and fluid gets pushed out into the surrounding tissue overnight while you're lying still for 7 or 8 hours. Press a finger gently into the swollen area for a few seconds. If it leaves a visible dent that takes a moment to bounce back, that's worth mentioning to a doctor, particularly if it's new, if it's getting worse, or if it's showing up alongside any of the other 4 things we just talked about. So let's bring this together, because here's the part that actually matters more than any single item on this list. No one of these 5 signs by itself means you're having a heart problem. Chest tightness can be reflux. Gasping awake can be a bad dream. Snoring can just be snoring. A late night bathroom trip can just be a late night bathroom trip. Swollen ankles can be from standing too long the day before. Any one of these alone is genuinely not something to panic over, but 2 or 3 of them showing up together night after night stop looking like coincidence and start looking like a pattern. That's the shift in thinking I want you to walk away with tonight. Not fear over any single symptom, but attention to the combination. Let me give you a real, if illustrative picture of how this plays out, because it's easier to recognize in someone else's story than in your own habits. Picture a man in his mid-60s, retired, generally active, the kind of person who'd tell you his health was fine if you asked. Over about a year, a few small things crept in that he never connected to each other. He started waking up 2, sometimes 3 times a night to use the bathroom, and blamed it on getting older, the way most people do. He noticed his ankles looked a little puffy some mornings and figured he'd been on his feet too much the day before. His wife mentioned more than once that he'd started snoring loudly enough to wake her up, and he laughed it off the way people do. None of those, on their own, sent him to a doctor. It was a night when he woke up gasping, needing to sit fully upright before he could catch his breath, that finally scared him enough to bring all of it up at his next appointment. The bathroom trips, the ankles, the snoring, and that one frightening night. His doctor listened to the combinations, not just the scariest single moment, and that combination was what led to further testing. It wasn't a dramatic emergency room story, it was a pattern that had been quietly building for the better part of a year, waiting for someone to connect the dots. That's really the whole point of this video. Your heart doesn't always send one loud, unmistakable signal. Sometimes it sends 4 or 5 quiet ones, spread out across months, each easy to explain away on its own. So here's what I want you to actually do with this. Over the next week, just notice. Are you waking up to use the bathroom more than once or twice a night? Any ankle swelling you didn't have a year ago? Has anyone mentioned your snoring, or worse, pauses in your breathing? Any nights where you woke up gasping or with chest pressure that faded before you could even process it? You don't need to panic about any one of these. You need to write them down and bring the list, the whole pattern, not just the scariest item, to your next appointment. This video is for general educational purposes only and isn't medical advice, and it doesn't diagnose anything for anyone watching it. If you're experiencing severe chest pain, sudden shortness of breath, or symptoms that feel different or more intense than anything described here, that's not a wait and see situation. That's a call to emergency services tonight, not after you finish this video. If this was useful, if it made you think about a night from the last few weeks you hadn't connected to anything before, subscribing means you'll catch the next one of these breakdowns. And if any of these 5 hit close to home, I'd genuinely like to know which one in the comments. It shapes what gets covered here next. Your heart has been quietly telling you things for longer than you probably realized. Tonight's the night you started actually listening.